are hitting the accelerator today on the deep dive, taking a close look at the European automotive sector. This isn't just, an industry. It's a massive, fundamental economic engine.
Absolutely. But as our source material shows,
Mm.
it's facing truly existential threats, mainly driven by the massive transition to electric vehicles.
And the stakes are just astronomical. We're watching this huge paradox unfold, aren't we? Europe, the birthplace of the modern car.
Right. Risks being completely sidelined. You've got global competitors, especially from Asia, moving much faster, uh, leveraging new tech that really challenges European leadership at its core.
So our mission for you, the learner, is to cut through that, let's call it strategic noise. We've dug into the crucial research to try and figure out whether this shift to electric mobility is, guaranteed wealth generation.
Or if, based on current trends, it actually risks hundreds of billions of euros of industrial value. It's a huge question.
Exactly. So to understand that risk, we first have to grasp the sheer scale of this engine, as you called it.
Yeah, the sources really confirm the sector's enormous footprint.
Okay, let's unpack this then with the core numbers, straight from that AC McKinsey analysis. How fundamental is this sector to Europe's financial health?
Well, think of it like the circulatory system of the economy. Its total contribution to European GDP, it exceeds a staggering 1.7 trillion euros.
1.7 trillion. Wow.
Yeah, but maybe the most insightful figure is the multiplier effect. Every single euro, just €1, invested by European car makers, generates 2.6 times the value. So 2.60 for the wider economy.
A 2.6 multiplier. That suggests the health of this sector is just critical for jobs, for stability, really across the whole continent. How fragile is that multiplier right now?
It's as fragile as the supply chains it relies on. That multiplier exists because the industry is this catalytic force, right? It stimulates activity way beyond just the assembly lines.
How so?
Well, for instance, it consumes 40% of European semiconductor demand, 40%, and it counts for 75% of European battery sales.
Yeah.
So if that automotive core weakens,
Then those connected sectors, suppliers, tech providers, they weaken instantly too.
exactly, which brings us to where it gets really interesting and frankly quite concerning, that massive economic power. It's facing 5 major structural challenges all at once.
Right. The sources call them the 5 large disruptors.
Why?
What are they and how do they create such, intense pressure?
Okay, so the challenges are global, technical, and political. Let's list them first. 1, geoeconomics. 2, uncertainty over propulsion technologies. EV, hybrid, hydrogen. 3, consumer behavior shifting towards digital services. 4, the evolution of software and ADS, the advanced driver assistance systems.
Okay.
And finally, number 5, the growing intensity of the challenge, particularly from the Chinese market.
Let's maybe pause on that first one. Geoeconomics. It sounds a bit, textbooky. What does it actually mean for a car maker deciding, say, where to build batteries or where to sell cars?
Yeah, it's a fair question. In this context, geoeconomics means things like political risk hitting global supply chains,
Yeah.
increasing trade protectionism, markets fracturing.
So less smooth global operations.
Precisely. Instead of one global supply chain, companies now face tariffs, competing subsidies, think of the IRA in the U.S., and political pressure that forces them to regionalize production. And that's a huge cost drain and a massive source of uncertainty.
And when you combine that uncertainty with the technological disruptors,
Yeah.
those threats are already translating into actual quantifiable financial loss, aren't they?
That's the really critical takeaway from the McKinsey data. It's not just a future prediction. It's a trend that's already happening. European car makers. They've lost over 13 percentage points of global market share just since 2017.
13 points. That's significant.
It is. And if this path continues, McKinsey estimates a staggering $370 billion of European industrial wealth. That's 21% of the sector's annual value is at risk during this transition to electric mobility.
That number, 370 billion, it's clearly designed to shock. How much of that risk is purely, say, technological failure versus political risk or that fragmented strategy you mentioned?
It's definitely a combination. But that strategic fog is a major contributor. You really see the sentiment captured in that quote from Oliver Bloom, the CEO of VW and Porsche. He stated it pretty frankly, the party is over.
The party is over. That's blunt.
It is. And it signals this isn't just about shifting tech. It's about a mandatory, urgent, fundamental reorientation of an entire industry that's operated successfully, for a century.
And the high-level analysis seems to back up that sense of being adrift, lacking a clear direction.
It does, yeah. The Jacques Delors Center paper highlights exactly that. The industry does not have a clear map to navigate this really decisive decade. Strategic attention across Europe. It remains blurred or obfuscata, as they put it, by competing national interests, short-term pressures.
While competitors abroad are accelerating their 10-year plans.
Exactly, which creates this real point of friction, one that embodies the strategic uncertainty, the 2035 deadline for banning combustion engines. The sources show a deep, real difference of opinion here about whether it's even feasible.
Right. So what are the two sides of that argument?
Well, it's the core contradiction Europe faces. On one side, you have significant political skepticism. Former Premier Mario Draghi suggested the 2035 ban can be unrealizable, and that it risks simply handing over vast market shares, especially to China, if the European industry isn't fully ready.
And industry groups.
Industry associations echo this. They're saying the emissions plan must be recalibrated.
Okay, so there's skepticism about the deadline, but despite that, the actual financial commitment to the electric technology itself, that isn't wavering from the big manufacturers, is it?
No, absolutely not. Our sources confirmed that the major groups, we're talking Mercedes, BMW, Volkswagen, they're continuing to invest very heavily in new electric drivetrains. Their focus is still squarely on solving the things consumers care most about: improving range, cutting charging times, developing better software platforms.
So if the large producers, the OEMs as they're called, if they have the margins to make those huge investments, where is the pain felt most acutely within the industry structure? And maybe just quickly clarify for us, what do we mean by OEM?
Right, good point. An OEM, original equipment manufacturer, is basically the big final producer. Your VWs, your Stellantis group, they have the brand, the scale. And that's why Zerfli's insight is so important here. He says the industry is essentially split. The OEMs, they have the margins to push electrification relatively rapidly.
Okay.
The problem lies with the traditional supply chain. That entire segment, he argues, is being crushed.
Crushed how? Is it just about labor costs or is it technological?
It's both, but it's primarily technological and, crucially, capital intensive. These suppliers, they're caught between the big manufacturers constantly demanding cost cuts and this urgent multi-billion-euro need for them to completely reconvert their technology.
From what to what?
From traditional mechanical components, the gearboxes, fuel pumps, exhaust systems, to EV components like battery casings, thermal management systems, power electronics. It's a huge shift.
And if they can't afford to make that switch fast enough, we risk losing critical industrial skills and knowledge right here in Europe.
Precisely. The fear is that the cost and the sheer speed required for this reconversion will just wipe out entire segments of the traditional European value chain. And they'll be replaced by newer providers, often Asian-based, who've been focused solely on EV components from day one.
That lack of maybe urgency or that innovation leadership, it brings us to that potential Sputnik moment that the economist mentioned. What specific technology really illustrates Europe's innovation lag most clearly?
Well, the economists observed that Europe is, and I quote, rapidly losing ground in every type of technology, which is a worrying statement. But they use robo-taxis as the really symbolic warning sign.
Robo-taxis, how so?
Well, these autonomous taxi services, they're already widespread, operating daily in many American and Chinese cities. In Europe, we're still barely at the testing stage, often restricted by fragmented regulations and, frankly, lower investment levels.
And the fear there is if U.S. and Chinese firms end up dictating the standards for autonomous mobility, Europe just becomes a consumer of foreign tech, not a creator. We miss out.
Exactly, and that structural disadvantage, it goes deeper than just robotaxis. China, for example, has invested massively in process innovation, in automation. They've achieved levels of production efficiency and flexibility that many European plants, already struggling with high energy and labor costs, just cannot match right now.
Which makes competing purely on price almost impossible in some segments.
Very difficult, yes.
Okay, so we've got massive risk, strategic uncertainty, and internal industry split.
Yep.
What does all this actually mean for the consumer? Our sources show global EV growth is accelerating, even if Europe's, say, 15–25% penetration rate seems physiological, as one source put it.
Yeah, if we look globally, Europe is certainly moving slower than some key peers. In China, for instance, nearly 1 in 2 new cars sold in 2024 was a new energy vehicle.
Hold on, what exactly is a new energy vehicle, an NEV? How's that different from just an EV?
Good question. NEV is the term used widely in China, and it's important because it includes both fully battery electric vehicles, or BEVs, and plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, PHEVs. So it's a broader category. And the sheer volume of NEVs being sold in China just highlights their market maturity. But it's not just China. Even in emerging economies across Asia, Latin America, Africa, EV sales jumped over 60% in 2024. And that's driving the emergence of strong, new local brands like VinFast in Vietnam or Tog in Turkey.
Right. This brings us back to Zerpali's critical point. Is the current dynamic in Europe being driven by consumers demanding EVs, or is it more manufacturers supplying them, maybe pushed by regulation?
He argues pretty strongly that the dynamic right now is overwhelmingly supply-driven. The underlying demand is there, he suggests, but the manufacturers must introduce accessible and competitive models, not just high-end, premium EVs.
And if they don't?
If they fail to deliver those accessible options quickly, well, global competitors, Chinese, Korean, Japanese brands, they will immediately fill that market space.
Mm.
And the urgency is compounded because that price difference between electric and combustion cars, it's expected to shrink dramatically in just the next 3 to 4 years.
So the window is closing. It seems the answer to that cost and availability problem really lies in the lab, in innovation. What's the research pointing to right now to solve these bottlenecks like battery cost and charging speed?
We are seeing some incredible developments, actually. The ultimate holy grail right now is probably solid-state batteries. They promise fundamentally better performance, more range, less weight, greater safety too, because they get rid of the flammable liquid electrolytes used today.
Solid state sounds like the perfect solution, the silver bullet. Why isn't everyone using it already?
It's purely cost and scalability at this point. We see prototypes from giants like Toyota, VW, BMW, but the manufacturing processes are just incredibly complex and expensive right now. It prevents mass production at a price point that works for, everyday cars.
Okay, so solid state is maybe further out. What's being developed to bridge that gap in the meantime? Maybe reduce reliance on those expensive raw materials like cobalt and nickel?
Yeah, there are really two main tracks we're seeing. First, lithium-sulfur batteries. They're being developed specifically to cut down on costly materials like nickel and cobalt. Companies like Stellantis, working with Zeta Energy, they believe this tech could also boost fast charging speeds by up to 50%.
Okay, that's one track. What's the other?
The second track is enhancing the existing lithium-ion chemistry, specifically by using high silicon content anodes. Silicon just offers superior performance compared to the conventional graphite. And the aim there, according to firms like GDI, is to achieve sustained recharge times under 15 minutes by 2030.
Sub 15 minutes would be a game changer for many people.
Absolutely. And we also have to mention the rapid innovation in how we use batteries, not just how we build them.
What do you mean?
Well, we absolutely must recognize the disruptive, often localized innovation coming out of China, specifically Cattle's replaceable battery technology, like their ChocoSib system.
Yeah.
This completely bypasses charging time concerns. You just drive in, swap out a depleted battery for a fully charged one in minutes.
Like changing a gas canister.
Kind of, yeah. And that kind of solution, it directly tackles consumer anxiety about charging in range, and it's rapidly gaining ground, especially in China.
Okay, fascinating stuff on the tech front. Now, we can't really talk about the future of the auto industry without looking at the bigger picture, the context these vehicles operate in. Our sources point out that global car sales and production actually peaked back in 2017, 2018. If we're not setting new records, what's driving that market stagnation, especially in mature economies like Europe?
It's really a mix of factors. Market saturation is one. Lots of people already own cars. Rising prices are definitely making new vehicles unaffordable for many. And crucially, the growth of alternatives.
Like what?
Well, reinforced public transport, shared mobility services like car sharing, e-bikes becoming hugely popular, and yes, eventually, robo-taxis. The private car is simply becoming less central to modern life, particularly in dense urban centers.
And that shift seems dramatically evident when you look at younger demographics.
Oh, it's stark. We saw a statistic from Italy showing that car ownership among people under 25 fell by 43% just between 2011 and 2021.
43%.
Yeah.
That's a profound cultural and economic shift, isn't it? A redefinition of the car's role.
Exactly. Younger generations seem to be prioritizing convenience, flexibility, access over actual ownership.
That redefinition takes us squarely into the city challenge. Anna Donati described the car as being a victim of its own success, leading directly to crippling congestion.
That's the perfect analysis. Sharp and accurate. The massive post-war boom in private cars has basically saturated our urban centers to the point of near collapse in many places. She argues the only solution requires completely integrating urban planning with transport strategy.
So it's not just about the vehicles themselves.
Not at all. We need strong reinforcement of rail and metro systems, yes, but alongside major urban requalification projects reclaiming streets for people, pedestrians, cyclists.
It's a systemic fix, not just a vehicle fix.
Precisely. The long-term goal for Italian cities, for example, is mandated now. reduce car use by 10 to 20% by 2050 through the Sustainable Urban Mobility Plans, or S2MPs. It forces cities to stop planning around the car and start planning around people and diverse mobility needs.
And that requires really radical long-term thinking, not just in vehicle design, but in the physical infrastructure itself.
Yeah, and for an example of really thinking long term, we could look at Singapore. Their building codes now actually specify that new parking structures, parking boxes, have to be built 3 meters high.
3 meters, why so specific?
It's done explicitly so those structures can be easily converted for other uses in the future, like housing, urban farms, community spaces, when they anticipate a significant drop in private car ownership.
Yeah.
That's genuine planning for a potentially post-car-centric world.
Wow. Okay, this has been an incredibly insightful journey through the source material today. Just to recap the core tension we've explored, the European automotive sector is, without doubt, an unparalleled economic force, right? With that massive 2.6 multiplier effect.
Huge, but its traditional leadership is directly threatened by technological inertia, by that strategic fog leading to fragmentation, by dependence on foreign supply chains, putting potentially that staggering $370 billion in industrial wealth at risk.
And we've seen the transition is largely supply-driven right now, meaning European manufacturers absolutely must deliver competitive, accessible models immediately.
Yes, and yet the evidence suggests Europe has been worryingly slow on some potentially game-changing elements, from rolling out robotaxis to achieving high-volume battery production at competitive costs.
So we leave you, our listener, with this provocative thought to consider. If the future of mobility is increasingly defined by software, by city-integrated services, by localized energy solutions, rather than just traditional engine parts, are the new battery technologies we discussed, solid-state, high-silicon anodes, are they merely Europe catching up on the old definition of a car? Or are they truly future-proofing the industry against those 5 core disruptors we identified?
It's definitely something to ponder as Europe navigates this absolutely critical decade. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the source material today.
Yes, thank you. We really hope these insights help you cut through some of the noise and gain clarity on the facts presented in the research. Make sure you follow the channel so you don't miss our next deep dive appointment.
Until then, take care.
See you next time.